decided to do a figure in an environment. I'll give you a little history of my reference shot here. Back in the mid 70s to mid 80s, while I was teaching down in Southern California, I used to take models up to Mount Baldy, which was maybe almost an hour away. And we would sketch, we would paint, and we would take pictures that we could go back and do more finished paintings of. This happens to be a little snapshot, about yay big, and I had it blown up. I've lost the negatives because, like I said, this was like 30, 40 years ago. This model is Steve Jacobson, and Steve is just a wonderful model because he authenticates everything. So I said I kind of wanted a mountain man, so he had a musket, powder horn, all the paraphernalia, and we went up there and did a couple of paintings. I did some paintings in acrylics while I was up there, took some photos. I happened to find this and thought this might be a nice figure environment piece, a little bit different. So I spent about 10 minutes or so getting a sketch worked up, and there's some things that are wrong with it. And it's because it's so rough, I did it so quickly. I really can't tell exactly how it works proportionally until I start to get masses in, and then I can see it for sure. So I'm working on a piece of toned hardboard, and gessoed and toned, kind of a neutral tone. Again, there's my hand, or if you want to see, there is white, so you can see the value of what I'm working on. And we're just going to start laying stuff in, trying to get this thing done again in 90 minutes. First thing I'm going to do is get kind of a muted blue background up top, because it is kind of blue. And I don't want it too dark, and I don't want it too thick. So what I'm going to do, that's already too dark, but if I rub it around a little bit, maybe add a little more blue to it. If I rub it around a little bit with turp, I can thin it out and get kind of some nice, maybe technique-y type stuff back into it for an underpainting. Sometimes it's very nice in an underpainting to have some of your lay-in show. And so when you're done with the piece, the viewer actually not only views the painting, but upon looking at it up close, the viewer gets to view the process. And so much what we would call the artist's hand, the lay-in.
What kind of hardboard is that?
It's just basic hardboard that you get. You can get it at a Home Depot. You can and have it cut. You can buy it at several art stores. I don't know that it has a brand. It may. I don't know.
Is it like masonite?
It's very similar to a masonite. It's thinner, not as heavy, and it's not as built up on the back side. So it's a little more lightweight. I like it very much. I like it as particularly a location sketching type thing. It's really, really nice. Your paint, my paint, for example, sets into it pretty quickly. So I get kind of a nice base to work out of. You can see I really went blue over in here. One thing I always keep in mind is how dark this is. This is not white. So as I'm painting this in, I'm not relating this to white. I'm relating it to a light neutral tone. A lot of chirp in the paint. That'll help thin it out too, so it won't go too dark on you. And if it does go too dark, I'll just take a rag and wipe it down. But right now it's not too dark, even in here. Over here, probably go a little bit darker. And so his head pops. Let's get some nice darks back in here. And then this rock up here is a little bit lighter, so I can kind of rub that down. While I'm doing this, I'm rubbing in the design. So this side of the rock is going to be in shadow. There's going to be shadow here. If that shadow's too dark, I'm just approximating what I want this thing to be like. So what you end up with is kind of a very loose, washed out lay-in.
Do you know if it's medium density fiberboard by any chance?
I have. That's a good question. I really don't know. I've got another one off to the right of me, and I can hold it up and show you if that'll help. It's big. This one's a 24 by 30, but you can see I already have it toned. Basically, that's it. It's thin, and that's the back side. That's the natural side of it.
Let's see if it says anything.
All right. Let me see if it says something on the label, which I don't know that it does.
It says hardboard panel.
Hardboard panel. So I was not trying to steer you wrong. It's a hardboard panel. That's it. I truthfully, I don't know. I think if you go to an art store, a good art store sell hardboard. You can get it at Home Depot. You can get it in 4 by 8 foot sheets, have it cut down to whatever sizes you want. Occasionally I'll do that. If you have a table saw, you can get it, cut it down yourself. There's a lot of ways of dealing with it. All right. Right now I'm painting negative spaces around my model, just so I can get the dark set up around him.
Sorry, I'm readjusting just because I cut off some of the reference here. That's better.
So when you see how dry that got and how hard I was having to work to get that to go down, so I immediately added more turf and a little bit more paint and just start to rub it in. That way you get it in there quick. The whole idea is to get this in fast so you can actually start your painting. And even if the color's wrong, just get it in there, because you're going to adjust the color and value as you move into your, what you might call more of your final part of your painting.
The hardboard doesn't work, does it?
Nope. I've worked, the largest I've worked on this is 24 by 36. And I sold a piece, and I recently saw it at people's home. And obviously it's, by the time it's put into a frame, it's fine. You can cradle it if you want to also, meaning you can add a brace to the back. I found I don't need to. It really, and I mean, this, you can see it hasn't worked even with gesso on it, because this has been gessoed. So all you're doing in the beginning is you're abstracting in the realistic shapes that you see in front of you. And when I say abstracting, you're not trying to be outrageously accurate with the exact shape. I just want to make sure I get enough of this overall territory covered. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think it's good enough that I can move on to getting into some other things, which is really what I want to do. This is the boring stuff to watch. And I also think sometimes finishing is the boring stuff to watch, because you really don't see much go on. The progress it made in your finishing part of your painting is so slow. This is where all that fast stuff and all the fun stuff is kind of done. So I know I can get some more darks around him, but right now, what I would like to do is get enough of the background in so I have at least 30 minutes on just the figure. So I'm going to really work on setting up this background. So I've laid in, for lack of a better word, I've laid in kind of the mid darks. I haven't hit all the way to the darks. I'm going to start with a little color now. And the first area I'm looking at with a little color is the water. Now it looks like it's a little more green than I thought. Just got another good look at it. So I mixed some ochre, some sap green. I'll be darned, that's not too bad. This is a feeling of this kind of ochre water, and I'm using the word ochre because everything else has a very cool cast to it, and because the rocks themselves are light, they show in the shadows, because they're so light, they show off a cooler or bluer kind of a cast to them, which is typical. A white sidewalk, for example, you see a shadow on a white sidewalk and you'll probably notice that it's very blue. So it's one of the things that I'm aware of, is that I've got these two light sources. The predominant light source is really the skylight, and the sunlight is just kind of glancing back from the left, and affecting the kind of the edge or rim of the figure and kind of the far side of the rocks. Up in here. And I've warmed it up as we move up. So what I did to warm it up is I added a little bit of burnt sienna and I added a little bit of the radiant blue. By the way, just run through the palette very quickly for you here. Palette consists of, I have a warm yellow. I bought that just recently and I've been using it. Sometimes I buy new paints and I want to use them. And so I also have a radiant white, which I always have on my palette. Naples yellow, light, yellow oxide, cad red, medium light hue. It's not the alizarin crimson, ultramarine, radiant blue, sap green, asphaltum, and burnt sienna.
Okay, I don't know if I got all that.
I will go over it again if people want me to. I'm going to go a little darker. I don't know why I just did that. Just stupid, I guess. I want to hit in some of the heavier darks on these rocks. So I start to build, because most of the rock is in shadow. Therefore, most of my painting is going to be in shadow, truthfully. And if I can use some of the light that I already have down there, I'll use it, and I will not reestablish it. Now, for the darks, it's again the combination of the ultramarine and the asphaltum. And if I want them warmer, I use more asphaltum. If I want them cooler, I use more. I'm going to go right below that where the shadow is. And the water down here gets much darker as a cast shadow. Unify as opposed to separate. In other words, if a form shadow and a cast shadow tend to feel similar, make them the same. You can separate them later if you got the time. But start simple. Don't start so complex that you have to keep getting more and more complex. Start simple so that as you add complexity, it feels more complete. A lot of dark around this picture. Same with back in here, up here. Let's see. The background, I add a little more blue to my color. Has some nice darks. Over in here, we get this dark area, rocks. I'm going to abstract them in. And when I say abstract them, I mean I'm not painting every little rock. I'm just painting the feeling of the lights and darks that I see in an indication. Much the same that I would do if I were on location. If I wanted a more realistic painting, I would literally spend a lot of time on the drawing, individualizing the rocks, and doing the very best I can to create a believability of the background. Right now, I'm just indicating it's going a little warm. So I added a little bit more blue to it. Starting to feel, not that it was terrible, it just felt a little warmer than I really wanted at this moment. Let the strokes look kind of interesting too. That's a key, because if you don't get finished with it and your stroke looks interesting, the painting can still work because you're indicating. The only time I really want it to get more definitive is when I get up close to my figure, who is my main, obviously, subject in this case. And I'm leaving out this one. I hate that. I didn't like that rock. It competed with the figure, and it was just this big obtrusive element. And one of the advantages we got as painters is particularly when we're on location, we don't like something, move it, get rid of it. It's easy to do if you're doing your own little setup, but literally if you're working on location, it's not that easy. So you just have to kind of use what many people refer to as artistic license and get rid of the darn thing.
So I'm not sure about this question from Laurel, but for your shapes, do you think straights, curves, S's, or some other way for shapes? Different shapes of strokes, I guess.
Yeah, it depends on what you're talking about. Strokes, I look for variation. Shapes, I try not to repeat. That's just my own personal. I try not to repeat a shape too often. If I see it, I'll change the shape. If you're talking about paint strokes, I'll do strokes like this, and then I'll come across it with a stroke like that, just to show variation. So it depends on what you're referring to when you kind of bring up shape, because shape could mean a lot of different things. Got to put the shadow below this rock. You got to keep moving when you're doing these things. You can't just dwell in one area. You got to move from area to area. Now, as soon as I get that's dark in, I know that I might have to deepen that rock, because I'm closer to what I refer to as an absolute, and an absolute means absolutely as dark as you can go, or absolutely as light as you can go. White would be as light as you can go. Black would be as dark as you can go. But since I don't use black, I'm using variations. Now I want some nice strokes up in here. There's part of a tree trunk, some little rocks up in here. I'm just going to kind of scribble. Just set it up. Kind of like that. That's working okay. Down in here, I can go a little darker. Keep an eye on my time here. Okay. Just because there's a lot of stuff in this, and I kind of want to be able to get as much of it as I can into the painting. So I'm kind of going to watch my time carefully and edit where I have to. I'm going to find there's a rock right at the knee, goes up. It's a drawing right now. I'm just drawing that rock in. And there's a shape right in between, shape behind that rock, behind this rock, dark. So to answer your question about shapes, I'm actually looking for shapes now, because shapes are drawing. And shapes can be character. So basically, shapes are really what your whole painting is made up of. Be rough, be free. Don't feel confined. Okay, it's starting. It's feeling all right. I'm going to start to get a little bit more into the background. Now I'm going to take some of my radiant blue, which is a much lighter blue. It's a little too pure. I'm going to add a little ochre to it, and I'm going to test it. Kind of maybe right on this rock. That's too light. Okay, so I throw some ultramarine into it, which is a much darker blue. And if it goes too blue on me, I'll bring a little burnt sienna or some sort of warm color to kind of mellow it out. I kind of want the there. That feels pretty good. It's a little bluer than I want. It's all right. The shadow of that rock. So I'm changing it. There's some color variation in this rock. We don't want these rocks to look like they're flat and done in one color. That's the one thing I'm trying to avoid. I actually added a little more ultramarine to that mixture that I was using. And I added a little, I don't know, I went a little too dark. I added a little bit of safflower oil. And what that does, it just allows the paint to go on a little easier. Get that blue, get a little bit of a different blue, and we get some other blue striations and variations. I just picked up some of the darks and just kind of, if like a little burnt sienna came out there, and I don't care, a little color to me adds something to the feeling of those rocks. I do want to paint a little bit of, indicate a little bit of these shadowy rocks up in here. Got to get enough of this background in where it begins to feel relatively believable. I'm going to add a little burnt sienna because I just see it, this blue get a little warmer as it faces my model. So I added a little burnt sienna to that blue, and we'll just kind of scrub in a little bit of that. And then as it goes down, it looks like it gets a little warmer. It's getting probably reflective light from the water. And it will keep your painting from looking too sterile, like you've painted it just in blue. This rock has a little bit of blue and burnt sienna, so we're going to kind of put that right about there. Another one back there. And then there's some darks. So I'm going back to my darks. my blue and my asphalt. And one strong dark is right here. It's almost linear, a little dark on that rock as it goes behind the rock, front of the rock. Now, as it goes behind that rock, we want to, that's more of a shadow, so we don't want a hard edge there. Down here. So these are all these little dark snaps that are beginning to pop in.
I don't know if you can.
Really necessary to get these in here, to get this whole unit working. And this is, when I say this unit, this is a big area, this big rock here. There's a lot going on in it. Now we have water rushing here. I see it. It's not real clear. I'm going to make it a little bit more pronounced. Back, get some reflective light. Okay, I keep adding. These are the kind of areas you can kind of go into forever. You can just have a heck of a lot of fun building color, building value variations, things of that nature. Okay, let's get this a little bit in this rock down here. Not much. A little bit more there. I want to pop in some lights in a little bit, just because I'm trying to give myself the right amount of time. So I want to get, there's a rock in here a little bit. And there's some rocks underwater. And we really don't want, you want those kind of, those are almost a little too dark. You just want to kind of indicate, and don't be too clear with it. In other words, don't over define it. Keep it kind of a vague shape, because that's really what they look like. They're kind of vague indications of rocks underwater. There's some up in here too. I'm going to have to do that pretty much with the positives of the water. There's a little bit of brush back behind this rock. Okay, I'm going to start to pop in some lights on the rocks now, just because I feel it's probably close to time in working at a fast pace. I'm going to go a little warmer. Let's get some of these little cracks and crevices in this rock here. Okay. I'm going to take, I think I'll start with a warm white and maybe a little bit of Naples in it to try and get some of the effects that I'm after here. Okay. I'm going to switch over to, this is a Rosemary flat, and it's a number, I think it's a 12. Looks to me, no, it's a 10. Yeah, I was going to go with the 12, but I'm going to stay with the 10. I'm going to take radiant white, a little bit of Naples, and that's how we're going to start this. That looks a little too yellow to me. Throw some medium into it. It's still a little on the yellow side. I'm going to hit just a hint of the radiant blue in there, so it's still going to be pretty light. See that? That feels about right. I'm going to put some safflower oil into it because I want to extend it, meaning I want it to be able to paint for a while with it without having to reload.
I wonder if it's okay if I just zoom in rather than have it on the reference.
At some point. So you see those edges? I am concerned about that right now. That's why you see me painting sometimes along the edge and sometimes from the edge. I don't want the edge to be too contrived so it feels like it's a cookie cutter. I want to paint, if you think about it, think about you're painting planes, surfaces, in other words, of the rock, and not necessarily kind of the shapes that you happen to see. And if a little bit of that dry brush comes through, it might add some character. And even where the paint mixes, that'll add a little bit of character. Do it with a big brush. Don't do it. If you do it with a small brush, you'll be sorry.
What size is that one?
This is number 10. That's okay. I'm going to add a little ochre to it, because as it goes down, I can see it get a little bit warmer. And the reason being is picking up a little bit of reflected light. The sunlight that's on the water is bouncing up and affecting these planes that are basically facing downward. I probably got lucky because, and I didn't think about this when I was choosing, but the color that I chose of the board, because I usually have several of these prepared, the color of that board is going to work if some of it comes through on where the rocks are. So I'm being a little bit more careful. You saw when I was first doing all this big lay-in, I was just slopping paint around. Now I'm being a little bit more concerned about hitting the shape in the right spot. It's a little dry. I can feel the paint getting a little dry on me. So I added more safflower oil. And we're going to come down here, kind of let it work its way over. And if I have to, I'll repaint in some of the darks if I mess them up, which I have already. Just so you guys know. In case you're sitting back there and you're saying, oh, is he going to fix that? Is he going to? I do that all the time when I watch people demonstrate. I was going to leave it like that. You're probably doing that. If I have time, I'll fix everything. But if I don't have time, I'll fix the things that bother me the most, which is what you do when you're doing a plein air piece. Unless you're going to go back and you're going to do what we would call a finished plein air, where you're going to go back 2 or 3 times on the same piece and turn it into more of a finished statement. See, to me, those areas are too dark. So I can probably, I've got a number 8, or is it a 6? Or I'm going to pick this long bristle filbert, and I'm going to mix up, just so I can go in and do a little correcting as I go. Mix up kind of a shadowy color with ultramarine, white, and asphalt. So some of those areas, to me, are getting a little, like that area is a little too dark. I don't want to dwell on it, but I don't like it. So you start to indicate these things a little bit more correctly now. And I won't leave them as positive strokes. I'll probably go back with the rock color and fix it. That feels better right there. Make this more of a crack. This also. Okay. Little heavy-handed right in here. Just kind of. That comes down over that. Into there. There. A little darker now. Because I'm, whoop, a little too much asphalt. I got a little warm on me there. Okay, I'm going to paint that rock in a little bit so we get a little bit of a differentiation in color. I just added white and ochre to the color I was using. I like to move color around. So if you see me taking a color and moving it to another area, I do that quite often. I think it adds, it creates a kind of a color harmony that I think is necessary. So we don't want to go much further. I do want to, however, because I do see it, a little bit more blue in it. And as it comes over here we're picking up, let's see, first of all, let's pick up a little bit of this rock back here. Okay, so we'll get that rock. Now we'll get a little bit of light grazing. That's a little too thick.
Try to move.
A lot of times when I make up mistakes, it's actually good for you guys to see it. Just because I think part of learning how to paint is learning how to fix what isn't working. It isn't always, because you're not going to do everything right. I mean, if you do, you're going to be so uptight with the way you put paint down that it'll really show. So I want to get enough character in these rocks so they begin to feel correct. Now the rock behind I want a little bit lighter because that's going to show off that edge. So we're going to kind of hit this rock back here. And in doing so, there's a light edge on that rock. And that light edge is right there. Whoops, way too big of an area. So let's go on up. And we let it just intermix with that paint because that's what will really make it look interesting. And then go back and fix the one area that I muffed up right there. So I truthfully, a lot of times when painting, particularly rocks, cliffs, things of that nature, messing up, for lack of a better word, what you might think of as messing up can end up working for you. Again, more warm. We just kind of throw it in here, get it in. So we get a little bit of interspersing of warms and cools. It's starting to look okay. At least I think it does. And again, I haven't stood back, so I'm judging it from like just a few feet away. I want to get that little crevice in there.
Jerry was saying you really push your values.
Yep, I do. I've been told many times that my biggest strength is value. You know, that might, if it is true, where it comes from is years of working in charcoal, black and white, that kind of stuff, where value becomes what your painting is all about. I'm going to try and push a couple other little things. I want to keep my eye on the time. 30 minutes in, so I feel okay.
We're all saying that it always seems tricky to compensate for the difference between working from photo reference versus real life. I guess you just have to go with what works in the painting itself. That's
what it comes down to. Truthfully, it's the painting that is what it's all about. It's not whether you've worked from photo, whether you've worked from life. I like working from both. I have to admit, one feeds the other for me. And I know people that only like to work from life, and I know people that only like to work from photos. But most of the strong artists that I know can work pretty comfortably with either or. Okay, let's get a little bit of life going on in that background area. I'm just going to grab another brush here, and I'm going to ochre, radiant blue, ultramarine. Let's see what color we end up with when I throw those three colors together. A little bit of white. Let's see. I want a little bit more in here, but this is what I'm shooting for back in here. Maybe a touch more light into it, and if I go too light, it's going to look too pretty of a blue. But we want to kind of indicate some of these rock shapes over in here. There's a rock over there, and the way you put your brush down has a lot to do with kind of mark that you make. So I added more blue to it with that right in there. I just don't want them all to be the same color. I really am very interested in the variations, the subtleties of warms, the subtleties of cools. And the different character of the marks, dry marks, juicy, wet marks. So they're feeling, truthfully, it feels like abstracted rocks, which is what I'm shooting for. Because they're not going to be, now if I wanted to, and I really wanted to take this to a finish, I could go back into those rocks and give them more clarity, more form. I don't want to. I want the beauty of the spontaneity of a 90-minute painting, a quick study, whatever you might want to call this thing. So I'm really looking for more of that than I am the exactness of all the things that are, that make up the painting. Okay, so they're feeling like rocks in the background, which is, I just stood back just for a second, just because I wanted to see. And I want a little bit of that blue to sneak down here so it isn't totally surrounded. I eliminated the one rock, so I'm going to create a larger rock. He's got some blues back in here. I'm going to even go a little more ultramarine in it because I want it to be even darker, a little bit more. And we just kind of push some paint around up in here. And then we'll take a little bit of white, same color, begin to, a few of the rocks over in here, a little lighter, that rock's lighter. Again, this rock has got some lights and some darks, and I'm going to go back on that 2 or 3 times. The shadow of this rock, which I didn't get in earlier. So we want to get that in there. All right, this rock up in here has got more warm in it, so I'm going to take the same color I was using, mix some ochre in it, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna to warm it up a little bit, and we're going to kind of paint the shadow of that rock. And there's a rock here that tends to be warmer, and a rock that comes off of his hip right here tends to be warmer. There's some darks I need to snap back in there. There's some bluer. So I'm mixing the brown and blue together, darkening it a little bit, come back in here. I want those variations. There's another rock here.
Betsy wants to know what's the difference between the Rosemary Ebony and the classic flats.
What's the difference between a Rosemary flat and a classic flat?
The Ebony.
Oh, geez, let me think about that. They're both Rosemaries. The Ebony is a Rosemary, by the way.
But do you know the difference between them?
The difference? There isn't. I mean, there really isn't a difference because an ebony is a rosemary. An ivory is what I use primarily. These,
yeah,
like that.
Have to ask Simi about that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe I'll get Simi to come to one of these little things that I do, and she can answer at the end of it.
Rosemary questions. That's a good idea.
Rosemary questions. And rosemary orders. If you guys want to order some rosemary brushes, I'll see what I can do about it. Just because they're cool. You can see how beautiful that laid down. Just, it went down effortless. And I can use the thickness of that brush, right? Look how thin I can get with it. Just because it's got such a lovely tip. A big white rock in here. And a little piece of light right on the edge of that rock right there. This rock is kind of mucked that up, didn't I?
No, but like, it's almost annoying that your strokes look like rocks.
It's the way you put your brush down, a lot of it is pressure, everybody. Knowing how much paint you have on the brush and knowing how to apply just the appropriate amount of pressure to that brush to get the mark that you're after. You know, there's no magic in that. It's do it. Do it again, do it again, do it again, and eventually you'll get really good at it.
So Jennifer answered the question. Thanks, Jennifer Foster in Ottawa. Ivory is synthetic, but classic is bristle. So there you go.
Oh, is that right? See, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I use the synthetics, which is right here. There's a synthetic, and it's a green.
Evergreen.
I use them both. It's not a preference. I like the feeling of the brush. That's the best way to put it down. Both of them. I use them both. I think the majority that I have are the ivories. Little piece of light on that rock right there. We got the side of that rock. We got another rock right in here. It's kind of interrupting. So see, I'm just using little pieces of the brush, not always just that big flat surface. I'm using the part that does the work for me. Whichever will make the work efficient and less laborsome is really what I'm after. There's a rock behind. There's another rock behind. There's some dried brush in there, which I'm going to put in a second as we move into a little bit some of the other atmosphere in the background. So we got a little bit of that. Now there's a tree trunk. I don't know if I think I might make that kind of just some light happening, dappled light happening up in here, but I don't want it to come out anywhere near as strong as it does. Maybe I'll put a little bit of light on this rock too. But I don't want it to come out anywhere near as strong as elements in the foreground. I have to, that rock I haven't hit. What time we got? Oh, I'm okay. I always set my environment up just in case people are wondering, when am I going to paint the damn figure? I always worry more about getting the environment set up before I, and the reason being, then when I paint the figure, I know the colors, the values that are going to work with the environment. Because I'm only concentrating on the figure. I've already got the environment set. So it's probably, if I were to give a piece of advice, that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give you guys today, is always try and set your environment up first. I know there are artists that don't do this, and they're damn good. But if you really want to keep a sense of control to your piece, it's very helpful if you guys set up the environment. Got to put that little shadow in on that rock. Okay, and we have little pieces of light, nowhere near bright light, but little things coming through right in here. There. Okay, and then there's a strong rock, light on a rock coming out from. I'm going to eliminate it. I'm going to eliminate that rock. Now you may ask why, because it's going to interfere with his hand. That's why it gets his hand. It's already pretty congested there. I don't want to make it more so. I do want to hit that water in there right now a little bit better. So I've taken some ochre, a little bit of the green. And we'll see. I'm just testing right now. I'm thinking to myself as I'm putting this down, is this going to work? I need to put a little bit of medium into it because it's a little too, I want a dry stroke, but it was a little too dry.
Why did you want a dry stroke?
Because the dry stroke give me kind of the character that I'm looking for. Pieces of light, little sliver back in here. And then I see, oh, really cool. Some cool blue reflections. I didn't catch those earlier. I'll show you what I mean.
Ray was saying, set up your scene, then place in your actors. One of my favorite Craig Nelson quotes.
And I wish I'll tell you, Ray, I wish I was not the person that was told to me probably my second semester at Art Center by a guy named Paul Souza. And I remember it to this day. It made so much sense to me. It was all of a sudden, it's like a light went on, you know, it's like, wow, okay, I get that. I got it. You know, I think we as a lot of, I don't know about other guys, but a lot of us as artists, we come up with our own little sayings, but we also rely a lot upon our mentors, people that influenced us. For me, it was Don Putman, Paul Souza, Joe Henniger, Reynold Brown, Mitch Quinnell, all those guys. Just there are things that they said to me when I was a student that I remember to this day. And if I'm right, I always try to credit them, because unfortunately they all passed on. And but their words ring in my ears constantly. And I think it was Putman, Don Putman, who really brought the idea of painting, of having fun with painting. Don't just make it hard, make it fun. And I've always tried to keep that in my head, and I've always tried to tell students, when I see students get frustrated, it's really disheartening, because you got into this because it's fun. Now, learning anything, to be good at anything, is difficult. And that goes for painting. It goes for almost all sports, music, any of that stuff. I mean, certain things you may have a knack for, and it may come faster, and other things may just take longer. So, I like to think that drawing came easy for me. But then when I think about it, it didn't. I just did it a lot when I was, it didn't come easy. If I could go back, which I can't, but if I could go back and actually see some of those really early drawings that I did, I'd be embarrassed as hell. And so nothing really comes easy. At least it hasn't for me. Maybe it has for other people, but I can't think of anything. Okay, it's starting to set up. I think I need a little bit of work here, and then we're going to go about 10 more minutes and then start to get into that figure. We're going to start to get on some of this foreground. The reason I haven't dealt with this is it's in front of the figure. Okay. Ooh, I just noticed something really kind of nice. This rock, as it goes down, look how warm that gets right in there. Oh, man, that's really pretty. And then it blends up into that part of the rock. And a little darker as it goes over. And we had some nice, beautiful blue, gray. Boy, I could really play with color in this if I wanted to. And I want to, I just don't have time. You see some beautiful blues before it gets into the lights. It kind of breaks up into this space. And I'm using a kind of a clumsy brush because it'll give me kind of the marks that I want rather than a real precision-oriented type of a brush. By clumsy, I'm using the long bristle filbert.
Francis said that it takes years to get better at anything really valuable. Even surfing took years to get wave knowledge.
I never got good at surfing. I surfed. I'm showing my age, I guess. I started surfing around 1963 over in Santa Cruz, the Pleasure Point area. And surfed, I don't know for how long, maybe for that year. And eventually I got overconfident, and we went out to a group of us went out to an area near Ananahuevo. So it was more on the ocean, not so much. And so this was the first one out that day. I got out there, caught a wave right away. Was going to show all my friends how good I had become. And fell, right? And the water was pretty deep there. I didn't realize it was really deep. And it was using a 9'3" Allen. And there was 45 pounds worth of boards back then. And I went down under the water. And when I came up, the board came down and met me on the lower lip and just turned my lower lip almost into a hamburger. That's what I was told by friends that were with me. And so we jumped in the car, and I ended up in Scotts Valley. Took about 13 stitches in my lower lip, and I never went back on a board. I got into body surfing after that, and that's all I did. But with the way boards are today, I'd really like to get, even though I'm old, I'd really like to try it again. Because nowadays the boards are light enough where,
If it snapped you in the head, it wouldn't be bad.
I mean, yeah. So if they hit you, it's not like a 95 pound or a 45 pound piece of redwood plowing into your head. That was weird, man. It was weird because I remember it hit me. It did knock me out. And I kind of dunked my head underwater. And all of a sudden I saw blood. And I went, whoa, that's not good. And so got out of the water. A couple of my friends hadn't even come in yet. And they looked at, and they said, oh my God, your lip looks like a hamburger. And so I went, oh, great. So he said, we got to get you somewhere. And I was driving. And so I drove. And interesting series of events.
So Ray said, it can be a challenge to have fun when relying on your art as your livelihood. What do you do to keep the process fun for yourself when preparing for important shows or commissions?
I do studies. And if it's commission, it's a different story, Ray, because it's a commission, you're doing what a client wants. If it's a show, you have some say in that. So I vary the complexity. If I've really busted my butt on a complex piece, then all of a sudden I'll do something simple, just to kind of feel better, so I won't. So, and scale. Personally, everybody's got a different story. I love working large. This is not a large piece. This is 18 by 24. This to me is very in between. It's definitely not large. Now I know there are many people that would say this is large, and there are probably some that might say no, it's small. It's so personal as to how you feel about it. But to me, it's got to be fun. When I'm working on a show, if I'm behind, sometimes that fun thing is a little bit hard to find. If I'm not behind, meaning if I feel I'm ahead of the game, and it's something I learned as an illustrator, I tell all students, whether they're painting students or whether they're illustration students, do not procrastinate. Do not wait till the last minute. You will, the quality of what you produce will be not as good because you're not giving it thought. You're not giving it the care that you might. So one of the things that I try and do is not procrastinate. The other thing that I haven't been doing it lately, but I run, and that was a big help for me. Gets me, when the gyms were open, I'd go to the gym. Gyms aren't open. I'm still trying to figure out a way to deal with that. But that to me was a big help. You got something else. I've often said, and you make a great point because it's something I think about quite often, and I've talked with Ann about it. I've often felt like I need a hobby. And it's because this kind of is a hobby, but it's a super serious hobby. And I guess guys that get hobbies, golf, whatever, they get really serious about it. I don't play golf. I did when I was 19, and I never got into it. Just never found it to be fun. And I'm not putting any of you guys down that love it because I think it's a great game. It's one of those things that just all of a sudden it takes a day. I never have a day. So I've often thought about taking up fishing. Fishing along a stream, maybe bringing my paints with me.
You wouldn't fish, you would just paint.
No, I'd fish. I did it when I was 12, and I remembered I loved it. So I'm going to hit some white water here. And this is where we want some dry strokes. Dry strokes will give you a little bit more action. I don't want to hit all the little flickers of light. I hate that stuff but we kind of hit that. Some of the little pieces of light.
Selective with that.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it alone. My old leave it alone line. Leave it alone. Okay. I'm going to hit the white water here. I'm going to hit water down here, and then we're going to start getting into this guy. I can see right now I need a little bit more manipulation back in here, a little bit more. It's a little oversimplified. And I do need some other areas there. That help. Just those little spots help. Let's get that white water in there. Oh, I'm 5 minutes off of where I want to be. And you know the line that I just used about procrastination? That's exactly the way I'm painting. Now you may wonder what the hell I mean by that. What I mean, truthfully, is I'm painting for this to be done in 90 minutes. So I know as much as I really could get lost in some of these areas and just have, a lot of fun, I know I have to keep moving. And so I'm not procrastinating. I'm actually going from one to another and just keeping going. So we're going to get a gushing amount of water coming right here. And the water is going to come from here back in here. It looks like there's a little bit. I'm going to grab another brush to dirty up here. And I'm going to pull some of this stuff down right in here because this is water. This is where you almost have to work and figure it out because we're not on location. I'm not there. So I'm having to figure out what I really see. I see some in here.
Marcia said, come up and fish in our lake and you can bring your paints.
I don't like lake fishing, so I would just paint. I don't like lake fishing. I did that a few times. I love fishing along a stream. Just like I didn't care for ocean fishing that much. I've done it a few times. I'm just not as crazy about it, but I love being able to be outdoors and up by you where Marcia is and my sister. I know the Feather River's up there, and that's where I used to fish when I was a kid. I love that. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. And I've never painted it. And so it's always intriguing me. It made me want to go up there and paint that kind of stuff. Okay, let's get this gushing water. I talked about it now. I can almost see it behind this, but I'm going to kind of, and it's very influenced by the sky. And it's not a blue, it's several blues. And I can see it kind of sneak back here. And I'm actually going to create, it looks like it comes right down in here too. Dry brush. This is where your dry brush will work for you. Nice light touch. So there's kind of water. Now we're going to begin to lighten it up a little bit just by adding white to it. Nothing tricky. And it's going to splash down in here. A little bit right here. And we're still going to get whiter. A little bit kind of coming up in here.
Chuck said to come up to the Premier Trout Stream on the McCloud River.
The what?
The McCloud River.
Ooh. That I don't know.
And Lindy's here. Hi, Lindy.
Oh my God. Hey, if Lindy's there, I'm going to put a plug in. I haven't gotten into it yet, but I finally got Andrew Fisher's book. And let him know I'm ready to get into it now.
Good.
I ordered it online. Smoke Ring Day. I think that's the name of it, if I'm not mistaken. And Lindy and Andrew are terrific painters that joined us in Sicily last year. And man, was that a ball.
Yeah, we missed that.
I think everybody's missing it. I know everybody that I still correspond with that was there with us talks about it to this day. Oh man. And I think the more we're stuck inside like this, the more people are going, oh God, I realize that. I really miss that whole.
Yeah, we miss Italy a lot. Ray was saying that you're always welcome to come by and fish with me on the Niagara River. His brother-in-law is a fish biologist and would be more than happy to show you the ropes.
Hey, I'm going to send, if I don't get up there, I'm going to send my son up there because he's doing documentaries and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he would love that, I'm sure.
Okay. Oh, a little bit down here, and then we got to move. A little bit of reflective areas, kind of dry. Just rub it in a little bit, and it's a little flat one color, so I want to get a couple other colors into it. I'm just picking almost any color on my palette. It's a little darker. That's a little bluer. Okay, let's keep going. Let's start to get into this. The guy. I want to get into the fun part, which is to me is the figure. I did the hard work. Now I get to have fun. What?
I was just going to say, Lindy said, thanks for putting in a good word for Smoke Ring Day. You might be surprised or not. You may say, well, that explains a lot. We miss you guys. We miss you guys.
I assume it will explain a lot, truthfully. Let's get into that. Let's get into this dude here. Okay. Lay in, everything is in shadow because the light's the last thing I'm going to paint, kind of like I did on the rock, where I just kind of went in the last minute and got some of that in. So let's lay in the darks. Let's start with Asphalt. It's really dark, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna to warm it up. And let's start right up here. And I don't even know if my drawing is good, because I did sketch this up pretty quickly.
What did you sketch it with?
Paint. I sketch it with Asphalt and turp. And usually if I spend a long time in the drawing, I can know that I've got all my proportions and my gesture working for me. If I don't spend a long time, I have to wait till I really start to get these shapes in so I can tell if it's starting to work. So far, so good on the figure. I haven't disappointed myself yet. And I'm using this number 10 because of time. Once again, big brushes save time. Somebody put that on a t-shirt. I'll buy it from you. No one would understand what the hell that means. You go to a department store with that on, they're going to wonder, means when you brush your teeth, you save time with a big toothbrush. So I'm just kind of making a feeling of what I call activity. I'm going to go just the asphaltum this time, a little darker. I'm going to add a little blue to it because I want it to go a little bit deeper. The reason being, it's down under here. I think this is where I might have messed up with some of my proportions here, but I don't know. Steve was so good, Steve Jacobson. Steve was so good. He got actually an old powder horn that he's got over his his shoulder. I'll tell you a funny thing. This was back in the 70s. So, and I used to have Steve, he did so many great, I'd give him an idea and he'd go and do it. I said, oh, Steve, got an idea about doing a rodeo clown. Boom, Steve comes in. He got ordered bales of hay and we set it up and he did a rodeo clown. But when he was doing this kind of mountain man kind of character, we used to drive up to Mount Baldy. The students all had cars. And so I give directions and we meet up there. And I give the model a ride. So Steve is with me in the car. And I got stopped. I think either I had a tail light out or I didn't get a ticket for anything, but it was a warning. So we didn't even think about this. But here's Steve with a musket in the car. And the cop I don't know if he didn't notice or what. He didn't say a word. And I thought, oh my God, here we are. So as we pulled away, Steve looked at me and he went, well, that's interesting. He didn't even say a word about my musket. And either he saw that it wasn't operational. So either he saw that it was a musket, but here's this guy dressed as this kind of mountain man character. And I'll tell you, when you do stuff like this, you really need somebody who's going to do the work for you in terms of a model and be authentic. And I had a couple guys, Jim Ellier, and I forget the other guy, that used to do, I'm going to run this shadow into the lake, used to do Civil War stuff for me. And these guys, you know, they're these guys that go to these Civil War recreations and all this stuff. That's what these guys were into. And so he had stuff that was so authentic. I wouldn't know. The reason I never got into painting that stuff is I never enjoyed the authenticity part of it. I just never got, but I know it's like guys that are great horse painters. Carol Peak, a good friend of mine, great horse painter. Kathleen Dunphy, good horse painter. Carol knows horses right and left. And I don't know horses right and left. I've ridden horses. I love them. I think they're wonderful. But as far as
Painting.
knowing, I've painted them, and I pretty much I paint what I see, and I try and understand. I always try and understand what I see. This guy's starting to work, by the way. My biggest concern is I thought, and I'm not convinced about it. I thought I might have him a little short. So I'm using pretty much the same color. I'm going to warm it up. It's not going to stay just like that. As it goes down his leg, I just took, in that same color, I added ochre and burnt sienna. Ochre and burnt sienna. And here's what I'm doing. I'm hitting this area down here. And it's a little on the dry side, so I added a little bit of terp. It's kind of fun to work on these photographs that I shot 40 years ago, probably. If this was, if it was late 80s, it would have been about 40 years ago.
Had to be early 80s, actually.
Could be early 80s.
God rolled.
Yeah, because you were there.
Yeah.
And Bev Laser was along with me. I think Steve Gray, who pops into some of these things, was probably in one of these.
Yep, he's here.
Even another fabulous artist, Steve Houston,
All right.
came along with us when he was a student.
And Roger's class came.
Yeah, Roger Hubbard's class came with me a couple times. Someone else too. I forget who else. Someone else's class came. I don't think it was Dan. I don't think it was McCall. I think Dan Cooper was up here with us once. Bill Cohn was up. I remember when Bill came.
And Patty.
Bill and Patty.
Joy.
Yeah, Joy Von Wolferstorp. All these
model. Yeah.
Great people. Yeah, Joy modeled for us.
Steve Gray said it was the late 70s for him.
Late 70s.
Gosh.
Ooh. It was late 70s and it was really mid 70s to mid 80s that I think I did most of this stuff. I know it wasn't the late 80s because at that time we were taking kids to the beach, and Dan McCall and I kind of got into this thing where he wanted to paint beach stuff, and so I said, let's do it. And so we started taking kids to the beach, Malibu. So we didn't. So I know it wasn't the late 80s. That's why I'm saying.
Some models, because oh gosh, it's a beautiful model that we all loved. That we
Who's that?
Take to the beach. The beautiful model from Art Center. Oh my gosh, I could see her perfectly.
Charlene, we took.
Yes, Charlene.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we took some cool model. Ed Knight.
Oh right, yeah.
I think my sister came a couple times. She was posing at the time.
Steve says he has a bunch of photos from Mount Baldy.
Really? You still got them? I'd love to see them, Steve. Okay, I'm going to start to lay a space in because I spent too much time just doing that. So because I have to give myself, I've got about 20 minutes. I'm a little behind where I need to be. So let's see what we can get in on his face and hands and so forth. The value of that hat, the relationship of the hat to the dark, and the hat is lighter than the flesh. So the hat's probably similar to the board. That's probably too light. It's just my guess. Let's try this. Steve's on there?
Steve Ray, yeah.
Good. I want to, hey, Steve, I need to talk to you.
He said he'll do some digging for the photos.
Okay.
But yeah, gosh.
I want to get Steve to come in and talk to my class. That's why I'm conducting school business here. We'll do it on Zoom.
That'd be great.
One of the great things about teaching as long as I have is all these students have been successful both as illustrators, as painters, and so I have this great resource of artists that while I'm teaching, I can bring into class. And now that we're on Zoom, it's even easier because you have to fly up here. So I can get people from all over.
I'll have to schedule that.
So we're kind of looking for some of the color variations in the hat. I like that. I like the colors that I got there. Son of a gun.
Surprise yourself.
Yeah. I'm always surprised when I like it. Usually it's okay, but it's either okay or it sucks. And in this case, I actually like it, which is better. Because I kind of like the blue. It wasn't intentional. I just want to soften a couple edges. We're going to hit the shadow of his face. I'm going to see if I can. Gotta find a brush that I feel comfortable with here. I don't like that.
Laurel wants to know if the information from these demos are similar to your classes.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm doing a much more of a variety in these than I do in workshops or that we do in class. If I'm teaching a wildlife class, I'm obviously not probably painting a mountain man.
Well, the two classes you're teaching now.
The two classes that I'm teaching now are quick studies, which is a class that I've started years and years ago, and we do everything. Last week they were painting let me think, still lifes.
Variation on a theme.
Yeah. It was a compositional exercise that I give based on still lifes. Next week we're painting figures with unusual lighting. So every class is a little bit different. That class is all about teaching. Everything is done quickly, first of all, thus the name Quick Studies. So the premise is to get people to do a lot of paintings. Do a lot of paintings and you will improve. But don't give anybody too much time. And the whole idea behind that is a lot of times people, they use that phrase that I was told, they polish a turd. They put lipstick on a pig, whatever you want to call it. What I mean by that is, I'm putting my little fingernail down in case you're wondering, I'm being a little more accurate now. They worry about the quality of the finish without ever getting a good lay-in. So, and I discovered this when I was teaching down south, this so many years ago, teaching at Art Center. Now that I'm teaching at the Academy, I've been able to take this concept and turn it into an entire class.
And write a book.
And write a book about this whole idea of painting quickly for the sake of practice, just for the sake of improvement. Not so much that it's going to turn you into a great finished painter, but it'll teach you a little bit more about mark making. And as I have said, the way you learn that is by being forced to do it quickly. And so instead of perfecting a piece, you do it, it's done, and we move on to the next one. You do that, and it's done, and we move on to the next one. So it's it can be intimidating, but at the same time, most students love it by the time they're out of the class. While they're in the class, a lot of them are going, oh my God. I'll say there's 5 more minutes and I hear moans and I think, all right, that's the way it goes.
What's your mixture for the skin tone?
Skin tone, burnt sienna, ochre, a little bit of red. And if I need to cool it off, I throw a little blue into it. And I'm using 2 or 3 skin tones. So I'm not just using one. And I warmed it up around the nose. And now I'm adding some cad red. And I'm going to warm it. Whoop, I'm going to throw the alizarin in there. Cad red didn't do the trick. And I'm using a little, almost a watercolor brush right now. Okay. So my theory in this is when you do these outdoorsy characters like this is, I kind of said the magic word, they're outdoors. And in doing so, they're going to be ready looking. They're not going to be, they're going to have more fun in their flesh tones, more colors. So I just took some blue that I was using in the rocks and I'm putting it under his jaw and I'm softening it into his neck. And I've created his jaw. Now his neck looks a little thick. I painted around the eyes, which I hate to do. So I'm going to kind of obliterate this a little bit more. And I'm going to take a little bit of a dark. And a little bit more of a dark. I don't want to go as dark all the way to the darkest that I want. And we'll kind of indicate where an eye goes. And on the same on this side.
Lindy was saying it reminds her of the day we did 6 paintings in Sicily. It was exhausting, but so helpful.
That was it, Lindy. That is quick studies. I started this in a lot of these European workshops that I've done. I started this years ago, where I usually take one of the 14 days that we're there and ask everybody to do 6 paintings that day. I usually start with a short little demo, and everyone from that point on is on their own, and it's usually in one spot. We're usually in a villa or in one particular place where they can kind of move around. And at the end of the day, we get to see what everyone's done. And people get into it. It can be, once again, it can be intimidating. I understand that. It's not that the reason that I give it is not to be intimidating. It's literally to teach people how to do good, quick lay-ins and not dwell on a super involved and refined finish, which everyone thinks about painting. And generally when you think about painting, you think about finished paintings, right? Well, finished painting only works if the lay-in is good. If the lay-in's of it, trust me, that finished painting is probably not going to work. So I'm finishing off the space probably a little bit more than I need to right for where I'm at time-wise. Get his hands in there. It'll be a little off time-wise, but we'll I have been the last few weeks. I've been off. I've been accused of being off many times. We start with the base flesh tone, and then we model that flesh tone. And the modeling on this flesh tone is it's kind of dark on the top of his arm and his wrist, and then he's getting a little bit more reflected light down below. And I can see on the knuckles, but I know to look for this, by the way, you guys. I always look for the extremities getting warmer.
Why?
Because that's what they are. All extremities, ears, nose, fingers, toes, they're always warmer. Just physiologically, they're warmer. Okay, so there's one. Let's get the lower shadow of that lower hand in, right. There's the thumb. There's the mass of the fingers. You don't paint fingers in individually. You paint the masses. Okay. I'm going to go back up to the face, and we're going to work our way down, hitting all the lights and any variations that I think I can pull off in the amount of time I have. Because we got about, I'm going to give myself 15 minutes, even though I'm going to be over a little bit. Let's get a little bit of, whoops. Oh, too much light there. Okay. First is big mustache. When it goes into shadow, it's kind of a blue-gray. And it's going to go like this. Just a little bit darker.
I just said ears, nose, fingers, toes. Nice little rhyme, Craig.
Yeah, you and your musical. Took you that long to think about that, huh? Been working on that for a while. Okay, top of his hat, a little bit of light. Goes up and over. On the, it's a little bit brushed it out with, but just a touch. I got to get those rocks at the bottom too. I just realized. Okay. I'm going to go with the liner now just because I need to get into smaller areas and I don't have time to make mistakes and go back and recorrect. So clean my finger. Tip of it on the bridge of the nose. I'm going to grab a second liner just so I have it handy. So if I do mess up like I just did. Okay. On his cheek, on his mustache.
Merle wants to know if these painting sessions are similar to the pace of your quick studies. Quick, confident.
No, these are much longer. We don't do any 90 minutes. Nothing longer than 45. But nothing that's involved. Nothing that's involved.
And smaller surfaces too.
Yeah, smaller, but nothing really anywhere near this involved. It would be just a figure. It wouldn't be all the busyness and environment. I mean, I spent, almost an hour of the time just dealing with the environment. And what I didn't get in, I'll take that first brush, is the dark of his hair. Very important because that separates the hat . And you can take that same piece of dark and begin to accent a little bit more into the eye and eyebrow area. Okay, let me keep on going down the rest of his body as quickly as I can so I need to get some color in there too. So I'm going to keep 2 brushes working. I'm going to keep one with more ochre and red in it and one with that light flesh tone. So the ochre, red, and a little bit of Naples. So I've got some color to build on. And here's what I'm going to do. I want to put color in where that vest is, right there. And a little bit of color back there. And again, more of that color right in where this vest is, right? Coming up from here. working its way down. A lot of color, so there's a lot of red in it too. So I'm basically using red and ochre. A little bit duller in shadow. And there's some shadow detail. There. Another more shadow detail. If you don't put shadow detail in at all, it dies. It just doesn't, it loses something. And you don't need a lot of it. You just need to indicate it. On his pants, right on there. A little bit of shadow detail because it's darker at the end of the sleeve, and it goes back to the elbow. I can see it, and another stroke up in here. Maybe just a little bit of a highlightation. Let's see what I can get in with the lights and begin to pull it all together here. Okay, now I've got this warm yellow, white, Naples yellow mixture with safflower oil. I'll mix up, clean my little finger, and let's start here one at a time. Go one, up here. So you see how that sunlight, all of a sudden we're making the sunlight work now? It's only because the setup is there. Add a little more yellow to it. And we'll go to the top of this where it's a little warmer because there is more variation here. So I can actually lay the brush down several times, pick up some of the underneath paint. Now I'll go back and pick up clean paint. We'll hit the brights.
So Chuck, Todd wants to know that when you're painting a figure in an environment, do you generally wait until the end of the session to bring the face into focus? Or
Yeah.
finish?
Yep.
Is that to keep from being too fussy with it?
Yep.
If done right?
It's because this is me. So I have a tendency to be a headhunter, and if if I get into it, I won't develop the rest of the painting properly. It's like, for me, it's like painting the eyes in a portrait. It's the last thing I do is really refine those eyes, because once the eyes are in there and they're done, the portrait basically is done. And then if I haven't laid in all the underneath structure, very often I don't have it. So I'm very concerned about getting, and I've used this term before, you guys have heard me use it, seeing things in the proper order. Don't look for the refinements before all the substructure is there. If you do, you're going to have refinements on just a flat surface. And almost always there is structure and tone underneath that flat surface. Wow, that's too strong right there. Still too strong. Let's do it one more time. That's better. All right, now we'll go into that hand a little bit. And there's a little bit of light on the tip of the thumb. And then on all those fingers, really, really light. White, Naples yellow, turp. I mixed a little bit of everything in here just so I could get it. I've got to get it to flow because I don't have time. So I've got to get that finger in, that finger in, and that finger, and then any sort of refinement. Light sneaks right here, catches just a little bit of the webbing. Back of the hand. Again, finger, 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 and finger. And the back of that thumb. That's about all I'm going to have time to do there. As much as I'd like to make that a lot cleaner, I just don't have the time. I'm going to pull the light that comes from right here. I'm going to pull it right down here. And then down at the bottom, the shirt. We're going to take that part of the shirt, that part of the shirt. And almost join them together. And a little piece of light right here on the tip of this. So the light's starting to work. Do the, oh, shoot, I'm way behind. Probably gonna go 10 minutes over. Don't hate to go over when I've tried to. I thought I had my timing planned. Goes to show you. I'm gonna stay with that big brush for a second because I think I can go quicker and be a little bit more spontaneous with it. And hopefully still make it work because I still need to put some stuff in down here to get the whole thing to come together. So we're gonna clarify that shirt a little bit more. And then we're going to bring some light, and I'm going to bring a little bit more cool light. So I added into that same color, I just added some more blue just because I want it to be, pants to be slightly different. And we're going to come first right here, and we'll soften that edge. And then we'll come out on the knee where it sticks out. And then on the other side, a little bit of light right here. Back in here, just a sliver right here. And then it lightens up, and down at the bottom, it gets pretty thick, and I really mess that up. So we'll just take a clean brush, a background brush. Probably suits would have been okay, but I didn't like it. So we'll come in, we'll get that wrinkle in, fold, fold, comes up, and that whole big white area right there. Soften that edge. See, it's working okay. It's not great. It's not bad. Same color with ochre. A little bit more. And a little bit on the boots. They're kind of hidden. It's back in there.
I think we're running late.
Huh?
I think we're running late.
I don't know what you just said.
We're running late.
I know. That's what I said.
Oh, okay.
I knew we were. Okay. Just gonna soften that edge. We're gonna put the musket in, and then put some stuff down below. So we're gonna, for the musket, I'm gonna use a, shoot, I thought I had it up here, I don't. So I have to use this. I was gonna use a ruler, but I need a straight line. So I'm gonna take, and it's similar to the outfit that the guy's wearing, but it's behind things. So I'm gonna kind of look at this and say it needs to go about here. And down. Do it again. Press a little bit more at the bottom because that's where the base is. It gets a little thicker down here. Okay. Oops. Now the barrel is right in there, and gets a little darker on the edge. There's a little light on the edge of it, not much, but I'm going to, once again, use my liner, and we're going to come down from this point. Oh, I think that's going to work. Okay, let's get the foreground stuff in and call it as done as I can get it in this amount of time. Let's get this, got a big rock up here that kind of goes blue gray in the shadow, which is right about here. So we're going to kind of, there's blue. It's actually going to work okay. There's some water back there too, now that I see it. Up in here, it's a little warmer. Now we're going to take the light of the rock, white, Naples, and we're going to bring that, overlap him. Overlap him there, kind of like that. Overlap, get that back of that rock. I like to smear some of this paint in, get a little bit, I want to be looser up here. If I'm looser, I will not call too much attention to it. It's also the fun part. It's a little bit more rock here. Here, I can smear that and really hit the top of this rock where it comes over and disappears. And then there's some water splashing around back there, blue, and so I put the, mix my blues. It's right about here. More blue. I'm making it stand out too much. It's got to be back in shadow. There, back behind the guy's cuff. Maybe, oh, look, even down in here. Son of a gun. There's more water, and this water spills over into that area right there. And then there's some white splashes.
Okay.
Last thing we'll do, take this big brush that I started with and put, I'm not going to put all the, I'll put those in maybe after we're done, but put this kind of, any little touches like that that you can do at the end. There's some shrub back here, not as bright as that, but it just helps it from being too sterile. There are other elements going on in it, and if you can get those in somehow, just even here and there, and the same up front, I might put a little bit of that in right at the very end, but I don't want to take time to do it right now, so we'll edit that out and pretty much call this as far as I can get it in this amount of time. How's that? You know what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to pick something easier. I think I might pick a fall type of a scene. In any event, hopefully that gives you the idea of what we can get going in 90 minutes with a figure in a pretty active environment. What I would do now, and I will probably do this off camera, is punch a few of my darks a little bit more, add a little bit more character into him color-wise. And I don't know if I'm going to do a lot down in here. As simple as it is, it tends to work pretty good. So what I'm going to say to you all now is bye. Sorry to hang you up for an extra 10 minutes from what I'm usually doing. But it's kind of a fun challenge for me because I haven't done something like this in a long time. I think a few brush strokes up in here of weeds might really help the piece. I'll have to look back and see if how I think it came out because I haven't really stood back yet. The effect from where I'm at looks okay. So with that in mind, week 33, paint well, and be safe.
Thanks again, everybody.